Cores versus threads. Cores are like the brain cells of your computer's brain. One core can only think about one thing at a time, like trying to read a book while cooking noodles. Something's going to burn. And when your computer slows to a crawl with 15 tabs open, that's exactly what's happening. One core. Too many things. Add more cores and your computer can do both at once. Modern CPUs have 4, 6, 8, even 16 cores, each handling a completely separate task. That's why your game runs while Chrome quietly devours your RAM in the background. Each core doesn't know the others exist. Think of it like a kitchen. Each core is a separate chef. More chefs, faster dinner. Unless they all fight over the same stove, and that's actually what happens when software isn't built to use multiple cores. The extra chefs just stand around. More on that in a bit. Now here's where it gets interesting. Threads. Threads are the secret clones of every core. Imagine each chef suddenly learning to work 2 stations at once. That's threading. Each core splits its attention between 2 tasks, switching so fast it feels like doing them simultaneously. It's not magic. It's very fast deception. Intel calls it hyper-threading. AMD calls it simultaneous multi-threading. Same trick, different brand name. And here's the mini payoff. More cores doesn't always mean better performance. A 16-core CPU doing one single threaded task is no faster than a 4-core CPU doing the same thing. Raw core count is only half the story. And most people never figure that out. Clock speed. Clock speed is your CPU's heartbeat. Billions of tiny pulses per second. Each one a moment where your CPU does something. Moves a file. Calculates a physics collision. Loads your cat memes. Higher gigahertz means more work per second. Simple. Except it's not. Here's the tension. A 5 gigahertz chip can lose to a 4 gigahertz chip. Not because the number is wrong, but because clock speed only tells you how fast the CPU ticks, not how much it gets done per tick. That depends on something else entirely. 2 chips, same heartbeat, totally different output, like 2 runners at the same pace, one sprinting in the right direction, one's running in circles. Modern CPUs even cheat their own clock speed. They boost beyond their base frequency automatically when things get heavy, then dial back down when they don't need to. So the number on the box isn't even the real number, it's the minimum. The actual speed, that's negotiated on the fly. Clock speed is the rhythm. But what you're about to hear next is the music. TDP. TDP stands for thermal design power, which is just a fancy way of saying how hard your CPU screams internally when it's working. It's measured in watts. A 65-watt CPU runs cool and quiet. A 125-watt CPU? Space heater that plays games. TDP tells you what cooler you need and how much power you're burning. Pair a high TDP chip with a weak cooler, and you're hosting a barbecue inside your case. Not great for performance. Terrible for your case fans, and terrible for the lifespan of everything nearby. But here's the twist. High TDP doesn't automatically mean high performance. Some chips burn 125 watts and underperform chips burning 65 watts. More heat, less result. You're not always paying in heat for what you're getting in speed. Efficiency is the game. And some chips are just losing it expensively. Match your cooler to your TDP, or suffer the consequences. Cache. Cache is your CPU's ultra-fast snack drawer. Before it runs to the kitchen, your RAM, it checks here first. RAM feels like driving to the store. Cache is reaching into your pocket. It comes in 3 levels. L1 is tiny but instant. The CPU checks it first. L2 is bigger, slightly slower, the backup drawer. L3 is the largest, shared across all cores. Still way faster than RAM, but last in line before the CPU has to wait. More cache means less waiting. That's the gap between a CPU that feels snappy and one that feels like it's thinking too hard. And here's something that surprises people. Sometimes a CPU with less cache at the same clock speed will noticeably lose in gaming, not because it's slower on paper, but because it keeps running out of snacks. The game keeps asking for data. The CPU keeps having to leave the room to get it, every single frame. Architecture. Architecture is the blueprint of how a CPU thinks. Two chips with identical specs on paper can perform completely differently because of architecture. Same cores, same clock, same TDP, different brain. Intel, AMD, and Apple redesign their architectures every few years. New architecture means the same number of cores, same clock speed, same TDP, but smarter. More gets done per tick. Less power wasted, more transistors packed into less space. The chip doesn't get faster, it gets more intelligent. That's why a 3.5 gigahertz chip from 2024 destroys a 3.5 gigahertz chip from 2018. The number didn't change, the intelligence behind it did. Think of it like upgrading from a flip phone to a smartphone. Same calls, wildly better everything else. And this is the thing that breaks most spec comparisons. You cannot compare clock speeds across different generations or brands without knowing the architecture. That 5 gigahertz Intel number and that 4.2 gigahertz AMD number are not playing the same game. Comparing them without knowing the architecture is like comparing two cars by their RPM and ignoring the engine entirely. Real-world performance. Here's where everything you just learned either matters or completely changes. Gaming doesn't care about cores. Most games run on 1 or 2 cores. So a fast, affordable 6-core chip with high clock speed will often outgame an expensive 16-core monster. More cores, slower per-core speed, video editing and rendering. Total opposite. These tasks split across every core you have. A 16-core chip will finish a render in half the time. Clock speed barely matters here. Everyday use, browsing, documents, streaming, almost any modern CPU is completely fine. You do not need a flagship CPU to watch YouTube. That's a very expensive way to check your email. So here's the final payoff. The one thing this whole video was building toward. The most powerful CPU on paper is almost never the right CPU for you. The right CPU is the one that's fast exactly where your actual workload needs it. Gaming? Fewer cores, higher clock speed. Editing? More cores, architecture matters. Office work? Buy the cheapest modern chip and spend the rest on RAM. Specs don't win, the right match always wins.